convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
Moderators of tonight's broadcast.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist? You're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs? Fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All righty then. It is January 13th, 2025, the 1454th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Okay, so happy Monday. Is that a thing people say? Just a few updates before we really get rolling here. I'll have shows this week. Today, the stream on Wednesday for paid subscribers, and then a show like today, public stream, Thursday afternoon. That'll be it. I think I'm going to do that sort of thing, 3 shows a week, and they'll usually be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday being the subscriber stream. So 2 public shows, Monday and Friday, the Wednesday subscriber stream. I mean, if you're a subscriber last week, that was 11 hours of shows. And then I did another 8 on Badlands and then another 3 last night. That's too much for anybody to possibly consume. And the funny thing is, 3 shows at 2 hours or 2.5 hours is already longer than I ever intended to do the show at 5 days, which is 1 hour per day, 5 days a week when I was rolling throughout, 2021, 2022, most of 2023. And then they just started getting longer because, we began taking that more kind of sweeping approach through things. And I'm really happy that I did that. It's just a lot for people to consume and a lot for me to produce. And I want to focus on some other things while also, allotting the proper time to this. And honestly, I think that we get through more material this way, sometimes in deeper ways, because I spend less time directly going through the news of the day kind of thing. So this feels like the right approach right now. And, we'll see what people's feedback is and how people are taking that. And we will go from there. I've been hitting the Substack writing on the Substack a little bit more often lately. So I hope people have enjoyed that. And then, like I mentioned last night, I was on Burning Bright's show, The Narrative on Badlands Media. We talked for about 3 hours. It was a very interesting discussion. Some of that stuff is what we go through here, but it was just great to be able to hang out with him for an extended period of time and just kind of shoot things back and forth unrelated to a movie. And, you know, on Badlands Story Hour, we're in that 90-minute window. So if there's a lot of things we want to get to, we kind of have to press through them pretty quickly. So it was nice to have that more laid back approach last night. I would recommend you check that out if you're like, there's not enough content this week. If you're like a crackhead about Be Reasonable. If you are a crackhead about a show called Be Reasonable, something has gone wrong. Already, Snowcat Operator popping in with gift subscriptions. And I think Dan Wright is as well. Thank you, guys. All right. So over the weekend on Devolution Power Hour on Saturday night. Now, this isn't only about that, of course, and I've been thinking about this for actually months, but it occurred to me that maybe now is a good time to propose this example. I'm probably going to write it up eventually, if not maybe later today, or tomorrow morning, probably more likely. I've had this idea about how to attempt to at least illustrate some kind of maybe less intuitive ways that things could be fake, and maybe even how things can be fake and real at the same time without venturing off into the woo of quantum physics. Okay. And I've been thinking about this example. All right. Let's say that you are having a surprise birthday party. You're throwing a surprise birthday party for your spouse or your significant other. All right. But you know, your spouse or your significant other hates surprises. And so you tell that person that you are throwing them a surprise party, but everybody you invite is planning on attending a surprise party. So that's one version of the example. You can also have the version, if you like, where the surprise party is totally real at the beginning, like only the person doing the surprise has talked to all of the guests and has not talked to the person being surprised. Okay. It doesn't matter which version. But let's say all those guests believe they are showing up to shout surprise. The person will be surprised. They'll be so happy and thankful to see all of their favorite people, and merriment will be made. Okay. To the person throwing the surprise party, if that person tells the person being surprised, then both of them know that it is not a real surprise party. Okay. All of the people attending the surprise party are in some way being duped. And you might say, well, everybody's just going to enjoy being duped. They'll have a laugh about it. It'll be fun. You know, the wife will say, oh, everybody knows Brian hates surprises, so I told him, but I got you all here. You know, that kind of thing, right? And it's funny because that's the kind of excuse people make for various levels of fakery with what we deal with. If one party knows that it's fake and they are putting on the display and everybody else experiences it as real and they're never told that it's not real in fundamental aspects, well, then you have all of those people experiencing it, believing it's 100% real, while the chances of it being real, except from their perception, is zero. And so it's clearly fake to the people who know that there is no surprise, right? And everybody else is just going through the motions because they were told to, which, if you think about it in a certain way, is kind of a demeaning way to treat other people. You're going to have them show up from their time on your time and then do something, act out something silly and pointless for your entertainment without knowing that it's for your entertainment. Seems weird to me. And so there are a few, different iterations of how this can go. So let's say that a wife is throwing a husband a surprise party. The wife, of course, knows it's a surprise party. All the guests know it's a surprise party. That means that the guy being surprised does not know. But one of his guests he works with, one of the guests to the surprise party he works with, says like, I'll see you Friday night, and would never otherwise see him Friday night. Okay, well, he knows something's up. That's a good indication that maybe there's a surprise party coming, right? Whatever it is, somehow he finds out that there is a surprise party. So the person throwing the party is getting other people to surprise the person, right? But the person who's meant to be surprised is no longer going to be surprised. And depending on what the relationship is, on how he found out, that person knows it's not real either. So both of them decide to play along and participate in what amounts to, in different situations, certainly, as a massive charade. And everybody else, again, is being tricked, experiencing the event as real, believing that it is real and that the other person is actually surprised, which is the one key element of a surprise party, right? If everybody finds out that the person who's meant to be surprised already knows about the surprise party, then they have all agreed to just go to a normal party and shout surprise because it's fun, or because, the person to be surprised is already showing up last. There are lots of ways for an event that people experience as real to be fake. And we have to be able to mix and match those variables, because it actually does matter quite a bit. And maybe we should just knock this out now, because it kind of goes with, the topics of discussion of last week and why people were getting so upset about the fakery of it all. And I saw this not long before the show started. This is this based and red-pilled influencer who says I guess he was a member of the West Virginia House. His name is Derek Evans. And, I've never had a problem with his posts before, but this is pretty odd. And so we're going to go over here to X, formerly Twitter, and have a look here. The only commercial structures still standing in Pacific Palisades are in the Palisades Village Mall, saved by businessman Rick Caruso, who ran for mayor against Karen Bass in 2022. Caruso used private firefighters and his own water tankers to save Palisades Village Mall. Okay, well, let's watch this video. Speed it up here just to 125.
Oh, is this his own water trucks?
Yep.
Wow, everything on. Oh my gosh.
I've been going around the city talking to firefighters and talking to paramedics. I've been talking to residents, and there's a deep concern throughout this city that the paramedics and the firefighters are understaffed because their budget has not been restored from 15 years ago when it was cut back. We have fire stations throughout this city that aren't mobilized because they don't have the staffing to do it, and it's just wrong. My plan as mayor is simple. We are going to restore the budget to bring the staffing levels back, to give the residents of Los Angeles the service they pay for and deserve. And that's the only way a city can be a great city. We have to reprioritize our budget in this city to make sure that our residents are safe and they're protected. And we can't do that unless we have a fire department that is fully funded and fully staffed.
I mean, I'll be damned. How's something like that happen all the way back in 2022? The guy who started his political career on the Commission for the Department of Water and Power. And what is the response on around the intellectual kids table? Comment after comment about how he should be governor. How can it be? Hold on one second. I want to just pull up this picture so you can see it. This is former Major League Baseball closer and also controversial, very, very controversial figure, John Rocker, responding. He said, unbelievable. Never would have happened on his watch. Derek Evans. Yep, they should have elected him. Why? Why should they have elected him? He is a Democrat donor, a California philanthropist, Water Commission, Police Commission, has his name on a COVID studying building at USC and a law school at Pepperdine, lost a fake election to a communist and did not contest it. Wanted masks, lockdowns, vaccines. And now his buildings are the only ones left standing, and it is being covered for with this mayoral video about how he has his own private fireman service. Except, you see, his daughter's house burned down, or at least that's what they're saying. Let me see what the machine says about that today. I heard it a few days ago. I want to be very sure about this, all right? I don't want to put it out there unless the machine agrees. Did Rick Caruso's daughter's house burn down? His commercial, yes, his daughter's house burned down in the recent Los Angeles wildfires. Caruso confirmed that his daughter's home was destroyed in the blaze. He also mentioned that his family was waiting to hear if one of his sons had lost his home as well. Caruso himself evacuated from his home in Brentwood, and he reported that several homes around his Palisades Village shopping center were fully engulfed in flames. Yet his shopping center remained A-OK. And 5 days later, we get this amazing video of how it happened. And it was from 2022. Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Absolutely knocked it out of the park. Elon Musk is now promoting Rick Caruso. And, you know, Elon promotes what Elon promotes. Elon, let me just pull this up for you. Elon promotes his little slap and tickle with Nicolas Maduro. You know, it doesn't mean anything. Donald Trump says all sorts of things to push a narrative in a certain direction, get a certain response, or make sure his hands are clean and he doesn't look responsible for the situation. But here is, and I'm sure that, you know, Elon's friends want him to post. I'm sure that Elon gets questions from his friends. Hey, will you please post in favor of this, man? I'm really trying to do this. And, you know, your word on Twitter would really have a lot of sway with people. So Obama's praise of Mayor Karen Bass in 2022. I'm confident you're going to be an outstanding mayor of LA. That didn't age well, blah, blah, blah. Could have had Caruso, says Elon Musk over the weekend. So, you know, and I've talked about why I think it's important to make these things clear. On Wednesday of last week, I was saying this is an op to make Rick Caruso look good. And people got extremely angry. Once you know it's an op, you gotta like step back. Okay? it could not possibly look more precision targeted. All right. So immediately, you know, it's not natural. How widespread it is and how many days along it has continued without being stopped should let you know that it's not some petty gang of arsonists. Instead, it's being allowed to happen. Okay. So, you know, it's an op. You know, it's intentional. You know, it's precision targeted. I understand that real people are affected, and I wish them well. Okay. They can be in our prayers, but they are not a shield for the rest of the narrative. All right. Virtually no one has an emotional reaction to talking about 9/11 as an inside job at this point. Okay. Does that mean that real people weren't killed? I know people who were killed. These things have to be disconnected. If you think it's okay to say 9/11 was an inside job, and of course it is okay, then you have to think it's okay to talk about this issue, and you can't block that off just because it's only been 6 days of the issue and it's still going. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. Not talking about things is how the official story within the central narrative becomes cemented forever. Imagine the post 9/11 comms without the shame campaign attached to them. Is it even imaginable? Freedom fries, everybody, freedom fries. So, my first reaction upon seeing this was, this is an op to empower Rick Caruso, to make him mayor or to make him governor. And if you go through the comments in that Twitter, Rick Caruso should be governor. Rick Caruso should be governor. I wish Rick Caruso was mayor, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. So Elon says there's still lots of bots on Twitter. I'm sure that's true. Maybe Elon was doing a honeypot for bots. I don't know. I don't know the purpose of these things. Okay, I can't know that. I do know that this is an op to make Rick Caruso look really, really good and then blame all the problems on issues that the Republican establishment is totally comfortable talking about. DEI, right? Governmental incompetence. They love that stuff. LGBT. Who has the wee-wees? Who has the hoo-has? Keep it very highbrow, right? These have always been the problems. These are always the problems. Always the same problems. Look at this. Look at this lesbian firefighter who won't pull a man out of a building. I mean, come on, right? Will they hire people that incompetent? Yes, of course they will. All of them are incompetent. They get to positions of some level of expertise because they are compromised or easily corruptible and easily controllable, therefore. But we got to try to understand what the op's about, or else we're going to get hoodwinked. Okay? We can understand. We can dunk all over wokeness and DEI. Ah, yeah, slammed them again. 8 or 9 straight years of slamming them. We pwned the libs. These are liberal tears. Daily Weimar, sell me a mug. Or we can understand what they're actually trying to do. And what they're actually trying to do was set up 2 years ago. Now, Rick Caruso, not a politician, not a household name prior to 2022, is the leading person to replace Gavin Newsom. And he seems to be totally in control. In fact, a friend of mine who is actually quite an investigator, sometimes we do not agree on all of the pattern matching. We have our discernment is tuned in slightly different directions, and she's a brilliant person, so we just don't always see eye to eye. But fantastic investigator, and she is down a trail on Italian mafia influence in the American government. And by the way, I'm half Italian. For all the people who get mad, they're like, is he talking about the Jews? Yeah, right now I'm talking about the Italians. I'm talking about the me's. Responsible for the organized setting of fires in California. And it's been in the mainstream media. Now, is that all an op to make us blame this on Italians? Maybe. It's all an anti-Italian conspiracy theory. I'm going to have to form a center, the Anti-Defamation Ligua. I think it's Ligua. And she also pointed out that Nancy Pelosi, the representative of the Italian mafia in California, is leaving, and they're going to need a replacement, and that replacement would be Rick Caruso. And I gotta say, that makes a whole lot of sense. Let me do one more Rickety Rick article. Rickety Rick, don't talk big. Here we are. How about that? June 13th, 2024. Rick Caruso is considering another political run. His best shot might be California's highest office. I have not read this article yet. I just liked the headline and wanted to point out the fact that this has been seeded for a while. I don't need to make a point beyond that, but I just want to do this. I wanted to see if there was any mention of fire or water. No. Okay. Very interesting. That would have been some interesting code language. So LA Times, the other day we read, it said he spent 100 million. Now it's 65 million. He lost badly. That's a very communist take on things. Low turnout, 10-point win for the most Democrat in a fake election. Always important to remember. Okay, in recent weeks, Caruso has been stepping up his critique of Bass's performance, though not criticizing her directly. Through his newsletter, he's blaming the city's pothole problem on its budget shortfalls. He sounded the alarm about the crisis in retail theft and about the use of LAPD officers to respond to graffiti. Some of his criticisms are more oblique. He's warned, for instance, that the cost of housing in Los Angeles threatens the city's vibrance and economic health by making it unaffordable for young adults, teachers, first responders, and many others. Oh, what do you think they're going to build on all of that land? Pacific Palisades is going to be another Century City, it sounds like. And Rick Caruso will be behind the building of that. Hey, man, the planners, I guess they don't even stop for the country's wealthiest and most elite propagandists and the industry that supports them. They just don't give a shit. All they need is a place to put the imported slaves. Mind you, that's coming from a developer whose beachfront Montecito property, the Rosewood Miramar Beach Hotel, offers rooms ranging from $1,500 to $6,500 a night. His compassion for struggling young people has its limits. The most pointed criticisms focus on the city's response to chronic homelessness, given Bass's intense focus on the problem since she took office. He has archly suggested that Bass, again, not by name, is doing enough to bring people off the streets. Is Caruso spoiling for a rematch with Bass? Well, here we are. Would he win? Some say he was doomed by his last-minute decision to register as a Democrat. He was previously registered as no party preference and a Republican before that. He's been bolstering his profile as a Democrat, denouncing Donald Trump and hosting party fundraisers, including a December event for President Joe Biden. Others believe that even with his this is so boring. Wow. Abortion. Got in right after abortion. Nithya Raman. Stolen election. stolen election and an illegally run election. Gosh, man. California politics, what an absolute mess. So they're talking about governor here. Oddly, Caruso may have a clearer path to that office. With Governor Gavin Newsom termed out, the office is open and the current field lacks a dominant candidate and is crowded by liberal contenders. If Caruso could position himself as a moderate candidate and finish in the top 2 in the primary, he could appeal to a broad spectrum of voters. California overall has shown little appetite for Republicans. The hapless Steve Garvey is evidence of that, but has far more use for them than Los Angeles does and still remains open to moderate Democrats, which is how Caruso would run. And of course, this person believes elections are real. Though Caruso himself did not answer the question this week as to whether he might seek the governorship, a person with knowledge of his strategy confirmed that he was thinking about it. It's clear there's a strong need for leadership, the source told me. He is clearly examining that race. There's something strange about the idea that getting beaten in the race for mayor of Los Angeles is a step toward becoming governor of California, but it's possible. And Caruso is ready to jump. So, 6 days in, looking pretty good. What did I say besides that? Let us have a look-see. Let's hear good old Gavin Newsom, our boy our boy New, tell us what's coming down the path. Our boy New. There we go.
Several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup and then the Super Bowl and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces.
First of all, throughout this video, watch what he's doing with his hands. If anyone is into this kind of esoterica and knows what deranged spell he's casting or what sort of sign language he's using, by all means, hit me up and let me know. This is ridiculous.
Forces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America to get it down.
I mean, is this just neuro-linguistic programming or what?
Here in LA, we thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that and all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those 3 iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team of looking and reimagining LA 2.0, and we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
So we're going to rebuild plus arms. And let's check one more here. This is from some random account on X, formerly Twitter, yesterday.
We're dealing with a myriad of issues. I was just talking to Josh Green, the governor of down in Hawaii, who had some ideas around some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in, buying up properties and the like. So we're already working with our legal teams to move those things forward, and we'll be presenting those in a matter of days, not just weeks. We're dealing with a myriad of issues. I was just talking to Josh Green, the governor of.
So he's seeking advice from Lahaina. I mean, no biggie, right? Probably meaningless. I mean, to the extent that any of this is real, they don't care at all what people think. That's the only thing to understand, right? Which means that they're either essentially at the point where they're ready to use state violence if they have control over that, or everything is about to collapse out from under them and none of them have any idea. And people think that that's impossible, but it's entirely possible because they live in an information bubble. And when the information that they receive is not what they believe it to be, they'll just reject it and override it and keep going. And that's kind of a thing that we all do to some extent, I believe. So that's our boy New getting ready to build back better. Also on California, our boy Bass has invited Donald Trump, or Donald Trump is coming, and Karen Bass has announced that he's coming. And by the way, when I say our boy, that does not mean that I like these people in any way whatsoever, just that I believe that they are either fully under control down to every last action, and considering that they are there by virtue of totally fake elections in the midst of all this, while Donald Trump has been at this level of power the whole time, or they are so utterly incompetent that everything they do is going to benefit us. And then you're just splitting hairs about what the effective difference is at that point. I think I have a couple more examples maybe of Build Back Better now that I'm thinking of it. I've been talking about that a bit over the weekend because, that's the thing that's really indistinguishable. Okay, I think I showed, maybe I didn't. Oh, wow. I didn't show this on here. We showed it on Devolution over the weekend. Just want to add this really quickly. This is Karen Bass with Gavin Newsom and the fake President Joe Biden from Friday. Oh, and Kaballah and some other lady.
Los Angeles, the region, we are going to recover. We're going to recover, and we're going to rebuild, and we're going to rebuild better. One of the biggest challenges that is faced.
Hold on. I forgot about that last part and have to bring that back. So you'll remember the story of how they, oh crap. I apologize. I actually didn't pull up the screen there. So you're going to get to hear it the first time then. Now, you'll remember last week the story about how they had lost control of the EBS. And to take that story as real is a mistake, okay? That story is a tell that you are witnessing an op, and that the op is designed to eliminate these houses, place uniparty blame onto Karen Bass, and then raise up in the uniparty Rick Caruso.
Region, we are going to recover. We're going to recover, and we're going to rebuild, and we're going to rebuild better. One of the biggest challenges that is facing us, and I also know that it is a national.
Is that an EBS going off at Karen Bass's command center? Oh, it's so ridiculous. She just said we're going to rebuild and we're going to rebuild better. What are we supposed to pretend that means? Well, we know what it means. We know what it means. They wrote books about it. And your favorite base and red-pilled influencers are now influencing you to build back better with them. Please elect our Build Back Better candidates. This was our agenda. Our agenda is being implemented, and you all, peasants, must not only accept it, you must like it. You must not only like it, you must promote the liking it to others and punish the disliking of it. Amazing. Okay. So, all right, I guess we've knocked out that later part of the show right now. Mob angle, very interesting. We'll see how hard they go on this Rick Caruso for governor op, because it is entirely possible that they could just keep on pushing that. Hammer on the water. The water stories are there for a reason. Rick Caruso is supposed to be looking good because of the water stories. Rick Caruso is the guy who knows what to do with the water in California. Karen Bass doesn't. She's messed this whole thing up. You know who to put in charge of water in California? Rick Caruso. In fact, 30 years ago, he was a commissioner on the Department of Water and Power. He already has this exact experience. Don't think about the Resnicks. It's not them. And hey, man, they got some kind of role. I don't know how big their role is. I don't know if they're the ones pushing all that, but the op is obvious. The op is obvious. And if someone is right about something that makes you mad, and later you find out that they were right, then they didn't do anything wrong, and the person who got mad at them did. Okay? That's the score on that. And I've been the person who got mad at something and found out later I was wrong. Okay? It can happen to everybody. But it's strange that people still have this urge to silence what they see as dissent or the breaking of consensus. It's the worst possible urge. It is the urge that protects false authorities. Okay? You want the only people who are saying something else to be silenced? And you're going to silence them through shame and attacks on reputation. And then, of course, as we saw throughout 2020, then it becomes attacks on one's relationships and then on one's professional life. It is unbelievable that after 5 years, people get triggered when you say, hey, you know that terrible thing that's happening that the liars on television are telling you to be scared and furious about? The government's doing that. They can't be. It's real this time. Okay. You know, and I know people are going through their stuff. I'm not trying to be totally insensitive. All right. That might've been insensitive. I apologize. But if you're having those feelings, deal with them. All right. The lashing out is ridiculous. It is mindless. It's like we want to be stuck here forever. Oh, now my emotions are being affected. People who have no problem calling other things fake just absolutely lose it when you call their pet issue fake. It's nuts. And you know who does that more than anybody? People who absolutely worship the science. And that is so deranged, and it's becoming so obvious how prevalent it is. This clip popped up today. I found it interesting. Let's just take a look and a listen, because we were talking about scientific materialism, and there are other names for that belief. Scientism. Scientism has its more religiously established names, brand names.
When I first made the correlations between Kabbalah and science, I was stunned.
We do know that Isaac Newton had access to certain mystical texts, certain texts of the Kabbalah.
Well, the Kabbalistic description of creation is coming from a single little point, from a speck, and of having matter form and time and space form all together at the very beginning. This sounds very much to me like the description of the Big Bang.
I couldn't believe that the Kabbalists could derive these truths without really knowing any mathematics or physics.
It is certainly true that in string theory, the number 10 is the dimension of space-time for supersymmetrical string theories, and 26 for bosonic string theories stand out as a requirement of the mathematics.
All the things that could destroy string theory, all the things that do destroy every rival theory to string theory, they are all eliminated in precisely 10 and 26 dimensions. These dimensions are magic. We physicists don't know where these dimensions come from.
The Zohar says those things. It could have been a lucky guess. I don't know.
The Zohar speaks of impure fats and pure fats, and that relates very well to modern medicine's view of the two types of cholesterol.
Now you tell me, how come that's the only text with 2,000 years old can have that kind of information so clearly there?
They knew things about the universe that took us till now to discover.
I think it's rather intriguing that the Zohar mentions cholesterol and mentions the liver and bile.
What I like about Kabbalah is that it has a rather profound view of a creator, of a divine being that transcends all possible notions that we could have.
There can be an interface between science and spirituality.
The Zohar's notion that light is a realm of no time and no space is quite consistent with special relativity.
What's been stopping it so far are, number one, the lack of a good concept. And I think the Kabbalah is offering that now in the context of modern science. And two, a reticence on the part of both scientists and people in religion to mix the two.
It's rather amazing, this uncanny reflection of some of the most advanced cosmology coming from our satellites, coming from our atom smashers, coming from our blackboards that are mirrored in the Zohar and ancient Kabbalistic texts.
All right. Now, I'm sure there are people out there far more expert in these subjects than I am. I just found it interesting with some of the stuff that we were talking about last week. And I think it's funny that the Big Bang, which is the explanation for how all of this got here, is from that. And again, people are like, are you anti-science? Well, I'm anti-scientism. I am anti-scientific materialism. I am perfectly fine with the scientific method. I love, I value very highly innovation, and technology is a tool. And if it's not a tool and instead it's something that you worship, that's fine. You're just a Jewish mystic. Like I have Jewish friends. That's okay. It's like, but you should admit it, right? Like you can be worshiping something and not realizing it. And of course, people do that all the time in all various parts of society. And I'm just as susceptible to that as anyone else. We are all fallen in the same ways, generally speaking. But man, very interesting because, you know, we eventually find out that far more of our, and I'm saying we as those of us who are in this awakening process, some people have been awake their whole lives. I understand. But, you know, we're finding out that a lot of the aspects of our culture are right in our faces as something that we've been led to assume kind of just disappeared over time, something from ancient cultures that is no longer part of our reality. If, you know, one of the guys in there said, it's amazing to find out that they knew 2,000 years ago, things that we are only discovering today. Well, are you really discovering them if they were known 2,000 years ago? And so I was thinking about some of this, and it's interesting because I'm not making a claim here. I'm suggesting a hypothetical, only a hypothetical. If it were to be the case that this miraculous technology that we have that allows us to communicate right now in real time across this great void through this magic box here, if all of that is the product of innovation informed by Kabbalah, then we are able to see that truth about Kabbalah represented in our world, okay? That would be kind of amazing. And the question is then, with what that has created, is it used as a tool or seen as an idol Do we worship it because of its creation and the ease with which we can detect it through the means we were taught by which to detect things? Could it be the case that we are also then able to detect in our experience that which is not created by that thing and is instead created by something entirely different, represented by a religion that has legitimately an inverted morality from Kabbalah, or maybe more accurately, it has a morality, whereas Kabbalah does not have one, except adherence to law. Can we see evidence of that in the world? And of course we can. And not only can we see evidence of it in the world, we can experience the evidence of it in our lives, in our interactions with that other world, and in ourselves. And so it really is amazing that people who are worshipers of the science and unwitting practitioners of Kabbalah can see the evidence of all that in the world while denying the evidence of the other thing. All right. I feel like we made it all the way through that successfully. I don't think I stepped on any rakes on the way through, but you never know. You never know. All right, checking the chat quickly, and then we will move on to something else. Something else. Okay. Done and done. All right. A few very boring parts of the political soap opera to discuss. Oh no. I want to let's hit this one before we do the political soap opera, because this I meant to connect to the California story. So we have our boy Blue, our boy True up in Canada, our boy New out in California, our boy Bass in Los Angeles, and of course we have our boy Z, the comedic actor Volodymyr Zelensky, in his funniest post of all time, I think. This is from yesterday. Today, I instructed Ukraine's Minister of Internal Affairs and our diplomats to prepare for the possible participation of our rescuers in combating the wildfires in California. The situation there is extremely difficult, and Ukrainians can help Americans save lives. This is currently being coordinated, and we have offered our assistance to the American side through the relevant channels. 150 of our firefighters are already prepared. How about that? That is amazing. So you might remember last week. Well, first of all, you might remember that Ukraine is in a war that they're getting crushed in. And they constantly need new stuff. They need new stuff all the time, which is why you might remember last week there was a story about how Los Angeles had sent, or maybe California, had sent fire trucks to Volodymyr Zelensky. Is he going to return the fire trucks? And if he does return the fire trucks, did the fire trucks actually ever go? Huh. Man, oh man. It could have just been a story on the way out and a story on the way back in. It's crazy. How can you say the fire trucks never went? You can't call everything fake. Oh. Did you record video of the fire trucks going over and then coming back? Is that what happened? Oh, man. They're telling you it's fake. They're trying as hard as they can to tell you it's fake. They've been doing it for 4 years. nonstop. And that's just when I realized what they were doing. They've been doing it for a really, really long time. And, you know, I'm not sure how people think we get out of this other than realizing that it's a show and that it's fake and taking responsibility, right? It's like you don't. How do we say this? You wouldn't allow your teenage son to go out on a Friday night with his friends, him driving, if he hasn't learned how to drive yet and taken his driver's test. You also wouldn't be very smart to do it with your 20-year-old son either, because if he hasn't been taught to drive and he hasn't taken his driver's test, well, then you've got a pretty good chance that he's going to get in an accident or something and that your car is going to come back a wreck. So you have like an immediate impact of a strong negative if you make that decision. You would never give someone that sort of responsibility if you knew for a fact they weren't prepared to accept it. If we are still prepared to accept all of these things as true because they're on television, how in the world would any responsible party who's been backstopping this thing for some period of time ever turn control over to people who cannot stop watching the television and groveling before the television characters? If we are under military government and the people want to take the power back, then the people have to take the power back. They have to accept the power. All right? It's not like we need to challenge them for the power. We need to accept the responsibility of taking that power back, which means first and foremost, we need to understand what has been done, what has been done in our names and what has been done to us. Okay? And then you begin rebuilding from like zeroing the federal government down as far as possible and then fixing things at the states, understanding that's where it's got to be fixed. And then if some sort of re-centralization for the original points, right? The defense of the nation, for instance, the calling together of the individual state militias, then fine, we can do that under the terms of the original Constitution. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what more people need to see for real. But hold on, let me see if I can find the original, like the video of the effeminate Afghan boy. Where is he? Where is he? Here he is. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. How did we see this and then just go on pretending everything was still real? The television still plays that clip. If the plane wasn't itself enough of a giveaway, and the fact that that was not the last flight out of Kabul at all, and that flights never stopped out of Kabul wasn't a giveaway, then the effeminate Afghan boy running along in the foreground, just happily waving his hands, should have been. And yet, we watch it, pretending it's real, to protect the television's honor. No, they would never lie to us like that. Imagine giving control of the infrastructure of the most powerful government in the history of the world over to people who think that's real. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Until that problem is solved, no other problem can be solved. I don't know, man. I know that's got to be angering. We voted and now we get power back. Okay. Okay, let's go to the soap opera. Eric Doherty on X, formerly Twitter. Trump team has announced its multi-day inaugural celebration schedule. The victory rally is on Sunday, and Inauguration Day has a packed schedule. Ooh, ceremonies galore. All right, on Sunday, we got Arlington National Cemetery ceremony. Lovely, somber. Make America Great Again victory rally. Donald Trump's going to talk. Candlelight dinner, Donald Trump's going to talk. All right. We can be reasonably assured that all of those events will indeed happen. Monday, St. John's Church service. Tea at the White House, the swearing-in ceremony, the farewell to the former president and vice president, U.S. Capitol departure ceremony. Are Joe and Kaballah attending? The president's signing room ceremony, congressional luncheon, the president's review of the troops, presidential parade, Oval Office signing ceremony at the White House, Commander-in-Chief Ball, Liberty Inaugural Ball, Starlight Ball. Trump intends to be speaking at all of them. We shall see. I consider everything on those days touch and go. Let's see what we have to see this week and how much chaos they might cause. They're still pretty happy with the fires. They have just announced that Hamas will release 33 hostages. 33. What a number of hostages to release. Exactly 33. Not a hostage more or fewer. I sometimes think about how the number of the beast is 666. If you represented that, 66.6, then a third of that would be, or half of that would be 33.3. So you have basically 67 if you're rounding, 33. And then a half of 33.3 would be 16.65. So that's 17. So you have the evil number, then the Freemason number, and then the Q number. Strange. Okay, so I was going to just, I always peek at CNN to know what's up within the retardopia as fast as possible. Let me show you. Maybe I can find this other CNN front page from earlier. It's astounding, really. Here we are. And also, I got to pull up one more thing here. We'll do that next. So this is CNN's front page today, earlier. How about that? They had a fire NATO this week. Oh, you know what? I think I have video of the fire NATO. Everybody's just supposed to pretend that's a real normal thing. Oh, I know how a fire NATO works. I'm going to tell you about how a fire NATO works. You can't say that's not a real thing. I've seen them on TV before. I've read the science about it. And now I'm going to tell you that makes it real. Oh, so that means you've seen a video like this before, that means this video is real. And you've heard a story about how the science works. No idea yourself, of course. And that's how you know it's real. Now, if somebody wants to tell me they have seen a fire NATO with their eyes and that thing happened naturally, I am willing to listen to that case. But right now, calling something a fire NATO in the middle of an enormous catastrophe, I guess if you say so, right? So this is Fox News the other day.
Wild video. Check out this fire NATO. It was captured by Fox 11 LA in the Palisades fire. This was last night about 10:45 local time. This one's been all over social media. Unbelievable. Yeah, you get big pressure changes, big temperature changes, and you can see those. It's a real thing. There's actually been an EF3 fire NATO that happened in the past. I'm trying to remember which fire it was from. It was several years ago, but just the point is you can actually get these actual tornadoes that have fire in them that can get pretty strong. It's more like a dust devil than an actual tornado, which would come out of a supercell. But my goodness, you want to talk about a contrast in what we've seen across the country over the last couple of days.
Okay. Okay. For sure that happened. For sure that happened. One other, no. I have a few more political stories, actually. All of them, a hell of a lot of fun. This is our God King, Elon Musk. Today, he posted a Ron DeSantis commercial featuring the gay dad who purchased his children, Dave Rubin.
2 years ago, Hurricane Ian demolished Southwest Florida. Immediately after the hurricane, everybody on the news was saying to rebuild the Sanibel Causeway, which is about 4 miles, was going to take 3 years. That's what everybody was saying. DeSantis basically had it rebuilt in a month because he brought all the best contractors down. He took everybody to the bridge and basically said, what do we need to do? We gave him our recommendations and he started making it happen the next day. That's proper, competent governance. We're just so not used to that. We're used to what you fled in California, an ever-growing state that taxes endlessly and punishes people for success. And then it's like, how is it that I have nice, clean roads in Florida? How is it that we don't have homeless people? Why do things work?
By the way, I think that this is also a commercial for Rick Caruso.
With no income tax in Florida. And why does Cali tax the high hell out of you and have much worse services and much worse infrastructure and a whole series of other problems? So the government shouldn't do much. Everything should be dealt with at the state and local level. And then the federal government should have a couple things that they're supposed to do. So that would be border, make sure the states aren't warring with each other, interstate commerce, foreign policy. I would say the founders basically got it completely right.
Now, Dave Rubin is a moron who does not have sophisticated thoughts about anything the founders thought. And I doubt that he has read Anti-Federalists or any of the critique of anything that happened during that era. Okay. Florida and California paired up right there. Competence versus incompetence paired up right there. A governor needs to handle these things and handle them immediately. It's right there. A disaster that needs to be rebuilt from. Now, they talked about the highway there. Let's see what the machine says about this. Worth also mentioning, I'll look at the machine. Actually, no, let's do that now. What, aside from the Sanibel, was it Causeway, was rebuilt after 2023 hurricanes? Businesses, about 100. So there were 500 businesses. Oh, no, this is, okay, hold on. Infrastructure, roadway damage. Yeah. All right. I don't want to do a deep dive on that right now. But yeah, having a natural disaster and having to rebuild from it is big, big business. And it's a big, big part of the Great Reset agenda. And people should begin questioning their governors, because if this is happening in California and being handled the way it's being handled in California, which is in a very obvious fashion, probably for show to expose what people like Ron DeSantis are doing. And Potentially that's why Elon Musk is sharing it. But this is to say that all of this was handled through Ron's competence. That's not what's happening there. Okay. They take global regime dollars, wash through the federal government in their state of emergency, and then they fund the rebuilding effort, which is in alignment with the global agenda. And people think Ron DeSantis is a good guy because Fox News advertised him for 2 years as being good during COVID when he was actually bad. So again, just like Rick Caruso. And this is the argument by which they are attempting to replace Karen Bass with Rick Caruso, and Elon Musk is advertising it much like he advertised Ron DeSantis's fake presidential campaign. He did his launch on X. Well, actually, at that time, it was only formerly Twitter. David Sachs hosting, the crypto guy on the fantasy team. I think Vivek was in there. A bunch of Trump haters were in there. DeSantis simps and the like. It was embarrassing. It shut down. And again, I believe Elon Musk is probably there to put a big time spotlight on things like this and show everybody how ridiculous it is. I hope that's what he's there for. Otherwise, he's just on that team. But it's very clear what that is. And we should recognize it as that. They are running a massive operation to empower Rick Caruso. Let us continue. This is from the Financial Times yesterday, while we're on the subject of Elon Musk and we just discussed scientific materialists. Let's go to one of the uber elite scientific materialists, Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel, I was talking about the sovereign individual and about Curtis Yarvin last night on The Narrative with Burning Bright. And Peter Thiel wrote the, I don't know what it's called, prologue, preface, introduction to the latest printing of The Sovereign Individual. That should be kept in mind. He is J.D. Vance's master, and his his philosopher king, aside from Eric Weinstein, whom he mentions in this article, is Curtis Yarvin. So this is Thiel Publishing in the mouthpiece of globalism, the Financial Times, a time for truth and reconciliation. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypse of the ancient regime's secrets. Or is that ancien regime? I just have always known what that word means, so I don't think about how to pronounce it, and no one ever actually uses it in conversation. In 2016, President Barack Obama told his staff that Donald Trump's election victory was not the apocalypse. By any definition, he was correct. But understood in the original sense of the word apocalypsis, meaning unveiling, Obama could not give the same reassurance in 2025. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypse of the ancient regime's secrets. The new administration's revelations need not justify vengeance. Reconstruction can go hand in hand with reconciliation. No vengeance, just reconstruction and reconciliation. Allow them to build us the new thing that we will like. We won't own it. We won't own any of it, but we will be happy. We will own nothing and we'll be happy. And with them, we have to reconcile because they were doing it for our benefit the whole time. But for reconciliation to take place, there must first be truth. Well, I'm happy to agree with that. But it's just kind of odd that the guy who owns the supposed vice president-elect is on board with Build Back Better. It's really strange that he's still saying this stuff now, because I was told when Donald Trump posted about J.D. Vance on Truth Social to announce that he had chosen his vice president. Oh, very important. In a fake campaign for a fake election. Criticism of J.D. Vance was not allowed. And here we are. You know, isn't it strange how just like being open and honest at the very beginning when you first see something ends up with better results than lying about it to protect some weird agenda that is totally disconnected from the thing you're saying and, you know, not real as you believe it to be anyhow? The apocalypse is the most peaceful means of resolving the old guard's war on the internet, the war the internet won. The old guard's war is on the internet. The war is on the internet. The internet's not even a person or a thing. Were they launching missiles at servers? I mean, I'm not saying a missile's never been launched at a server, okay? But nobody waged war on the internet. They tried to censor. Well, was that the war on the internet? And the war the internet won? What? My friend and colleague Eric Weinstein calls the pre-internet custodians of secrets the distributed idea suppression complex. Eric Weinstein also was on that Chris Williamson podcast. If you haven't heard it on YouTube, you should hear it. It's Eric Weinstein for 3 hours. He sounds drunk for a lot of the time. I don't know whether he is or not. He cries a bunch. He talks about how wonderful he is. And he then preaches the gospel of scientific materialism and quotes the Talmud. So, you know, think of that what you will. He was Peter Thiel's right-hand man for a very long time. Then he goes into how Fauci messed up during COVID. Nothing about how much tech advanced, how beneficial COVID was for them, how much money they made during COVID, only that Fauci is to blame. It's incredible, isn't it? It's like going after Karen Bass for everything wrong with LA while an entirely different agenda is being pursued. Darker questions still emerge in these dusky final weeks of our interregnum. Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen recently suggested on Joe Rogan's podcast that the Biden administration debanked crypto entrepreneurs. And fine, we'll leave that alone. Read the article if you like. But Mark Andreessen, again, as we mentioned last week, is the funder of Bari Weiss and her outlet, The Free Press. Okay, Bari Weiss is the woman who at the New York Times wrote the article on the intellectual dark web. And, you know, I know that I've shown it many times. But I don't want anybody to, you know, for anyone who's a newcomer, I don't want anybody to think I'm just making this all up. It's staring everyone right here in the face. But the problem, of course, is that we have connections to these TV characters, right? We like Joe Rogan, or we like Dave Rubin, also part of the intellectual dark web clown show. We like Brett Weinstein. We like Eric Weinstein. We like Jordan Peterson. We say, oh, this guy's okay. These other ones aren't, but this guy is okay. By the way, it's so funny. Sam Harris went on Bill Maher and talked about how he thinks that Trump's ear in assassination event #1 could have been cut by the teleprompter. And people are going nuts about how Sam Harris has lost his way into conspiracy theory. Those same people believe that Thomas Matthew Crooks is a real guy. And also believe that that video earlier was a daring escape from Afghanistan for those few lucky enough to have caught the wheel well of the last plane out. Oh, man. The crazy thing is you just got to have the self-confidence to be like, yeah, okay, of course, that's not real. That's it. That's it. Newcomers, you just got to look at it and be like, you know what? I am going to hold on to my dignity as a human and admit that the thing right in front of me is not real. That's all. Easy does it. We've all been there. Doesn't matter. Okay. We got hoodwinked. We were conditioned and brainwashed into it, but we got hoodwinked. The goal is to not get hoodwinked anymore. The New York Times, meet the renegades of the intellectual dark web. This written by Barry Weiss. The regime itself, the paper of record, chose for us our new intellectual heroes and took this ridiculous photo shoot where they all think they look like the coolest, classiest, most intellectual men who have ever walked the earth. And they look like absolute fucking dorks. Look at Eric Weinstein. Christina Hoff Sommers, the former champion of feminism bad. Joe Rogan looking particularly 4'3" here. Whoa, what does it say about Charlie Kirk? I'm really only interested in building this intellectual movement, Eric Weinstein said. The IDW has bigger goals than anyone's buzz or celebrity. And yet, when Ms. Owens and Charlie Kirk, the executive director of Turning Point USA, met last week with Mr. West at the Southern California Institute of Architecture, just outside of the frame, in fact, avoiding the photographers, was Mr. Weinstein. He attended both that meeting and a one-on-one the next day for several hours at the mogul's request. Mr. Weinstein, who can't name 2 of West's songs. How cute. He's just that dorky guy who doesn't really know Kanye stuff. He just listens to jazz. Eric Weinstein. Said he found the Kardashian spouse kind and surprisingly humble despite his unpredictable public provocations. It's just interesting. The episode is the clearest yet example of the challenge this group faces. In their eagerness to gain popular attraction are the members of the IDW aligning themselves with people whose views and methods are poisonous. Could the intellectual wildness that made this alliance of heretics worth paying attention to become its undoing? So Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Turning Point USA, probably all being punked by Kanye West. Brett Weinstein, Heather Heying, his wife, next to trees. Gosh, this is so dorky. Sam Harris stuck in a bush. Claire Lehman, this lady's an idiot. Quillette, she lost her shit during COVID. Crazy person. Just mean and crazy too. Michael Shermer, like ready to sprint out of this bush that he's gravitating in. Oh, it's so stupid. Dave Rubin sitting on a pine cone. Dave Rubin with a pine cone in his ass. Wow. Okay, so that is your intellectual dark web supplied for you by the regime via Barry Weiss, who is funded by Mark Andreessen, who just went on Joe Rogan's podcast to pitch their same agenda. So I just want to hit a few more highlights here. The first Trump administration shied away from declassifications because it still believed in the right-wing deep state of an Oliver Stone movie. This belief has faded. Peter Thiel is telling you that the Trump administration coming in, the fantasy team, no longer believes in the right-wing deep state, like the neocons there. Why don't they? That's an awfully weird thing to say. And it's an awfully weird thing to say as a good thing. Talking about the regime, let's just go through this. Our ancient regime, like the aristocracy of pre-revolutionary France, thought the party would never end. 2016 shook their historicist faith in the arc of the moral universe, but by 2020, they hoped to write off Trump as an aberration. In retrospect, 2020 was the aberration, the rearguard action of a struggling regime and its Struldbrug ruler. These people, man. Little wink. I think that's German. You guys see that? German. Neocons are cool again. You guys see me winking? There will be no reactionary restoration of the pre-internet past. Okay. That's really something. I mean, maybe there will, maybe there won't, right? But to declare it as being on the side of the internet and the internet having won, I mean, who knows? Maybe, and let me just make clear how very optimistic about this all I am, okay? The internet that was the weapon is a tool to us that allows the people to make sense of all this together. And that's what's happening. And the lead we have taken is not going to be relinquished unless we relinquish it. All of this is about the people's belief. The importance of pointing these things out is not to suggest that this agenda will win. I don't believe it will. The point is to understand that the people who support this agenda are still plowing forward at top speed, believing they will be successful and that Donald Trump is a vehicle to their success. Okay? Them saying nice things about Donald Trump does not make them actually Donald Trump's friend. They did not win an election for Donald Trump. No one won an election for Donald Trump besides Donald Trump. There was no election, okay? It was a fake election. The result was planned a year in advance, or much more probably, maybe 4 years in advance, maybe 16 years in advance. I don't know. But it was clear for years, which is why I said 4 years that it was clear. If you know what's going to happen in a fake election, because you understand it as a narrative event, and you understand that the narratives have to lead toward a specific place and a specific way out, and you say that a year before, and then that exact thing happens in the election, well, understanding the election then as real seems to me to be pretty silly. The future demands fresh and strange ideas. Now, fresh and strange does not necessarily mean new and different or diverse or anything like that. Can I embrace strange ideas? I'm happy to listen to strange ideas. Always happy to listen to strange ideas. In fact, the stranger, the better, because everything's been inverted for us. We're trying to resolve that with what actually maps onto reality prime. And sometimes there are things that we might think are way out there upon first hearing them. And then we think about them and we're like, oh, well, that's exactly what's going on. So very important. Old ideas can be made fresh. I'm all open to that too. And I'm open to tech solutions within those areas. I'm not even an enemy of tech. It's just a tool, and you can't worship a tool. New ideas might have saved the old regime, which barely acknowledged, let alone answered our deepest questions. The causes of the 50-year slowdown in scientific and technological progress in the U.S., the racket of crescendoing real estate prices, and the explosion of public debt. Fair enough. The causes, or the cause primarily, is globalism. Okay? The global regime's plan is what caused all of those things, and it caused them all on purpose, the same way it does everywhere else all the time. Right? You don't need to have a degree in economics to be like, to figure out who's hitting you, right? I mean, it's that simple, honestly. Do you need someone's hitting you? Who is it? I don't know. Let me learn physics. Let me get the government to fund a study. I've got to go through the grant process. This is going to take me 2 or 3 years, and then we're going to recruit a university, that process is going to take around 6 months. We're going to need to hire a bunch of people to get through those processes. And then, of course, once we choose that university, we're going to have to hire a whole new team of people to liaise with that university about what they found. And I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, we might find out who hit me. That's how our society actually works. While the people who know who did the hitting just keep hitting. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. I'm glad that all you guys are doing okay. Doc from Amish PA, $10. Smartest show out there that everybody should be listening to. CP is the best. You are too kind. Who knows? Maybe one day they will be. And if they don't, you know, poor California. I hope that Rick Caruso runs under the slogan, "More California." I've listened to the voters and they say what they want is more California. Okay, Rick. Smart. Holy shit, man. How can it all be so stupid? I didn't think it was possible. I really, really did not think it was possible. But it is possible. Everything can be absolutely, totally retarded. Like in ways I never imagined. Oh, man. What an adventure. Okay, so everybody's been passing this around today. This is hilarious to me. So Truth Social, Citizen Free Press, dropping this clip. This is Norm Eisen, the author of the Color Revolution playbook and all of the Trump lawfare. At this point, who knows? Maybe he's our boy Norm. This is so ridiculous. But yeah, watch this. This is Jennifer Rubin, by the way, formerly of the Washington Post.
Do politics. We're going to do law, but we know that any successful pro-democracy movement also has to be very vocal about culture. We'll have a humor column. We'll even have a cooking column, but we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of pro-democracy flavor.
They are trying to sell a new news website to blue sky boomers. And see that, boomers out there? I specified which group, okay? Not you. They're going to entertain people. Those two people are going to curate entertainment for other people. That is what we are being told right now by them. We are going to figure out what's entertaining and bring it to you. Now, let's be clear. Norm Eisen and Jennifer Rubin aren't going to do that. They're just going to have a new place to publish their lunatic screeds. But there's something else that's very strange about that video. Like, I recognized the voice and I wanted to, let's just, all right. This is, I want to let you know who I think it is. Here we go.
A guy walks into a bar. Joan Rivers is the bartender. He sees a sign over the bar that reads, cheese sandwich, $1.50. Hand job, $10. He says to Joan Rivers, are you the one that gives the hand jobs? Joan says, yes, I am. He says, well, wash your hands, bitch. I want a cheese sandwich. Good night.
I absolutely love Gilbert Gottfried. I guess I believe that he passed a few years ago. If you have never seen his octopus joke, I would or it might be squid, but I would strongly suggest it. Let me see how long it is. If it's real short and I can find it quickly, then we'll play it. He also used to be a very funny Howard Stern guest when Howard Stern was funny, and Howard Stern now is I don't know, a lonely 70-year-old cat lady, I suppose. I mean, he must be listening to him. Yeah, octopus. Oh man, what the heck? All right, I'm not going to be able to find his octopus joke quickly. Okay, so we'll move on. Love Gilbert Gottfried. What should we do? Okay, we're gonna plow ahead here past that. So they're starting a new website, I guess, called The Contrarian, which is ridiculous because they are like top level disseminators of the central narrative. If there is anything they are not, it's contrarian. But of course, all these people want to set themselves up as like the voice in the wilderness speaking out against Donald Trump, this tiny oppressed minority speaking out against the new orange Hitler. And again, same playbook. Okay. So it sounds to me kind of like they're finding a new word for resistance. Now, speaking of other regime communists, this is the communist senator in the illegitimate Senate from Vermont on Jon Stewart, on the podcast of Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show. Oh, I guess he's the host again of The Daily Show, isn't he? Anyhow.
Very critical. I don't know what your view is of what Netanyahu has been doing in Gaza. Okay.
Brother, preaching to the,
Okay.
I would say choir, but you and I both probably had to go to a synagogue. So I don't know what I'm preaching to the cantor.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I introduced legislation that would stop arms sales to Netanyahu. We got 19 votes, which observers thought was very significant.
Right.
Significant majority of people who consider themselves Democrats agree with us. I got 19 votes. Okay. The American people do not believe that we should be supporting a government that is starving children right now as we speak. But if you stand up, you're going to find that AIPAC and other billionaire-funded super PACs are going to go to war against you, putting huge amounts of money in a primary in your general election. So it's not a question of not understanding. There are many members of the Senate who will come to you privately and say, my God, what Netanyahu is doing is outrageous. I just can't vote because money is going to come and destroy my political career. So you got to get at the root of everything, not at everything, but a key part of this whole discussion, John, is money in politics. People cannot vote their conscience. They can't vote their intelligence when they know if they vote against the corporate world or the big money world, they're going to get defeated at the polls.
That I have to say, that's an incredibly dispiriting statement because it speaks to, it's not ignorance, it's willful and it's cynical.
No. That's not will. But look, John, you're a politician. You're a United States Senator. You're thinking about, the issue. All right. You know the prescription drugs are too high. You want to vote with your constituents, but you know that if you take a bold step to take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, they're going to pour huge amounts of money and defeat you. All right? That's what you got to be thinking about. Now, so, you can blame the politician there, but he said, yeah, well, I'm going to get beaten by somebody who do worse, right? The system is broken and corrupt, the political system.
Right.
So in that clip, Bernie speaks from a position where he pretends that elections are real and that voters are deprived of what they might really want because of money in politics. And he says the money would be, what we need to do is get all the money out of politics, and then the AIPAC money will be out of politics, and then people won't support Netanyahu anymore. Now, you don't have to like Netanyahu or any of the history of Netanyahu to understand that the regime has been trying to get rid of Netanyahu for the last 2 2 years through color revolutions launched against him and with the paragliding go-kart incident. Okay. No defense of Netanyahu, but we have to be real about what the regime's actually doing there and whether or not they want to replace Netanyahu. They've wanted him replaced for 2 years. But the craziest thing here is that Bernie Sanders is like making the argument that because the political system is broken and corrupted, that politicians can't be blamed for voting against the people and against their own conscience throughout their career because they have to stay in office. Because if they don't stay in office, then someone else will be in office rather than them, and that person's going to be worse. If they don't stay in office, then they can't work on all these priorities, right? All the things that Bernie talks about. Raising taxes on millionaires and billionaires. A clean environment for our children. Housing for the homeless. Care for single mothers. You know, he goes down the entire list of things. I can't be around to take care of all those issues if I get voted out of office because I don't have the money to compete in fake elections. That is extraordinary. That's extraordinary what he just said. Bernie Sanders is a diehard, dyed-in-the-wool communist. Okay, so none of that is surprising out of his mouth, but it sounds like he's saying the opposite. And it sounds like he's making an argument for the people, but instead he's just making an argument that it is okay to be politically corrupt yourself if the system is corrupted and it forces you to be corrupt. That he's actually doing good work on the part of other people, but he's not doing good work because he hasn't accomplished anything on any of those issues ever in 60 years. There's still issues. They're getting worse as the country spends more money. That is, it really is incredible. And the funny thing is, it's kind of like, I had the thought this morning watching that it was kind of like fractional reserve banking, right? I'm going to be here. I'm going to take care of these 10 or 20 things for you. That's why I have to do this other thing. But none of those 10 to 20 things will ever exist. It'll just be fake stuff that he's giving people. I'm going to give you work on the issue of income inequality. That's what he offers in trade for his participation in corruption. He's going to work on issues of inequality. Sorry. This is your politics. This is your regime. This is your uniparty. Bernie Sanders is not your friend. He is not a friend of the people. Bernie Sanders is a communist. He's always been a communist. He's a statist. He wants the state to grow and take care of everything in your life. You know who else wants that to happen? All of the technologists. Why? Because they see you as useless eaters. So why would they want anything else? The state will control everything. And it won't even have to be the state. They're going to be able to take their hands off completely, just like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have with the censorship on their platforms. It's not me, it's the community notes. We allowed the users to help us, to help our system, to help the machine determine truth and falsity. And once they've decided what's true or false, that's what's going to label your post. And if you do the wrong thing and you put out those negative vibes, well then, no one's going to see your posts anymore. It really is incredible. It's like fractional reserve politics. A bunch of promises, none of them will be real. And because he promises a return on the investment, allowing his corruption into office, just keeps going. Never actually returning anything. in fact, negative returns, and he charges you a fee, charges you a VIG. So none of the downside, and none of the downside is his responsibility. And of course, there is no upside. And people are like, well, look at all the things that government has provided and that government spending has provided in the way that society has arisen. The idea that that's not possible without a totalitarian state is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And, you know, there's another contour to this, especially with the Build Back Better people, especially with the Build Back Better people who suggest that they are on our side. They are privatizing the various government agencies, the experts and the authorities. There'll be private corporations. They will still advise the various decentralized entities, whether they are states or, you know, potentially these quote unquote freedom cities. I don't know what Donald Trump's plan is there. I hope it's not to hand them over to the technologists and just let them create their own little world. Although maybe the experiment's worth it. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. I just wish they'd have it, to be honest. You know, if people were doing something good for the good of humanity and they had to lie about it the whole time and trick people on the most massive scale anyone could ever imagine, you can't just assume that's good. Well, you know, people were getting tricked the other way, so telling them the truth wouldn't have worked. Maybe if we had invested into telling people the truth in a straight and direct way, it would have spread more quickly than just secretly hiding it in movies and television shows over the course of 70 years. I'm just saying. I mean, I appreciate the people doing the work, you know. Whoever is out there doing the work, I do appreciate them, but I don't know. You'd think that the movement that would get behind the actual project, if indeed that project is actual, would be absolutely massive and public about it, you know. And maybe that's what Trump intends to do. People would just be dunking all over everything. I told you something else was going on. And after we got over that initial round and liberals being very, very mad and broken, we would be able to plow ahead. Like, that's my vision of the American Renaissance. And that next stage envisioned by scientific materialists, I have no reason to believe that their vision and my vision are aligned. I just don't. And I'd be happy to talk to these people and let them make their cases. Maybe they deserve a hearing out. There's just no reason to trust them. And you can see the information operation, and the information operation itself is lying absolutely all the time by the wealthiest people in the country with the most powerful voices who get paid $1 million a week to do it. So I don't know, man. Don't know. We are tearing through it today. Feeling good. Hopefully everybody out there is feeling good. I think that I think it's important for people to be looking ahead and expressing their concerns and listening to the feedback. Is it a legitimate concern? Do other people share this concern? Other smart and informed people? By the way, I would rather ask the first 10 Badlands listeners in the chat about what they think is coming in the future than I would about the first 10,000, I don't know, attendees of the Democrat National Convention. And it's not even close. Those people don't think about any of those things at all. I don't know, man. You got to look ahead. You got to look ahead. And we got to talk about it. You know, Elon Musk talks on Twitter about how we are the media now, and talks about how if you see something, like say something and put the evidence up and like let this be the collective experience of mankind so that in some way it is the news and we can have all these windows into what's going on in the rest of the world. And hopefully at some point our discernment between what's real and fake will become very finely tuned, and it'll be a much more effective tool because it actually is a tool. But gosh, what was I saying before the discernment? Did I just go totally off track? The technology? What Elon said this week. Unbelievable. I just led myself astray. Someone's probably going to post it in the chat, and if they do, I will probably get myself back on track. But oh yes, I was talking about how we are the media now, and the oh yes, that's what I was talking about. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ann Boyer just saved me. So he says we are the news now, and he wants people to show the internet their personal experiences from every possible viewpoint. And when you say it like that, it's a little bit weird, especially knowing that they seem as though they worship the internet as a false god. The internet is a wonderful tool. It is not a false god. Going to war with the internet. These people sound like psychopaths. But the point is that people can also share what they think is going to happen and their concerns so that other people can consider those things, you know. And if the machine is reading everything, then the machine is also reading the things you say, and that balance begins to tip. If they can't control the machine, then the machine is essentially controlled by the collective knowledge poured into it. And if people are pouring in correct moral knowledge rather than the degeneracy and stupidity that currently makes up the machine, maybe things go in a different direction. I'm just saying, this is how we communicate our experience. I often think of the internet in terms of, like, obviously condensed, right? But into kind of a primitive sort of village or a hunting camp on safari. If you go out and you see a lion close to the camp, and you run back to camp and tell everybody that there's a lion close to camp, and somebody asks you your source and wants to see if maybe you were able to get any of the hairs off the lion, you live in a society that wants to die, or you're dealing with a person that wants to die. That is mindless, but that's exactly what's happening now. And instead, I'm saying that it's not so bad to be like, hey, did anybody else see that lion? I can't be 100% sure, but I think I saw a lion out there pretty close to camp. That's the sort of thing that would make other people around be like, okay, well, that is definitely something to be concerned about. Is there a way that we can fortify ourselves? Is there a way that we can safely see whether or not it is a lion? Maybe you lead somebody else back there and just find out. Who knows, right? But we pretend that it is weird to speak our ideas that don't conform to consensus, but it's not weird to lie on purpose so that other people like us. That has to change. So, talking about tech and consensus, This was a very interesting post today from Don Jr. He said on X, formerly Twitter, on election night at Mar-a-Lago, while biased outlets called the race a coin toss, my family and close friends used the prediction market Kalshi, that's Kalshi if you want to look it up, to know we won hours ahead of the fake news media. I immediately knew I had to contribute to their mission. Today, I am proud to announce that I am joining Kalshi as a strategic advisor. The Kalshi team has worked hard, sued the Biden administration, and achieved the impossible feat of becoming the first and only legal prediction market in the U.S. I'm excited to be a part of what they're building. Now, time to trade on whether Biden is going to pardon Fauci and Liz Cheney. Now, here's one of those moments where something is catching my eye that people might initially think that sounds like a stretch. Okay? And I get it. And you don't have to believe it at all. Consider it a possibility, and then in the future, hold it in the back of your head as new events emerge and we get more information. And if the new information that emerges maps onto the reality described here, then you might think, well, maybe there's something to that. And you might keep waiting for the next piece of information to emerge. And if that piece maps on, you might say, okay, maybe he's really on to something, right? Or if it doesn't map on, you simply move on with your life. On Twitter, if you did that, what would happen is that it would clearly go a different direction. And then the person that hates you most would show up for no reason whatsoever and be like, I see you got that Kalshi thing wrong. Okay. Well, you know, you can say that if you're retarded, but you also wore 2 masks in your car. So I'm going to keep thinking it's you, you know? We cannot be discouraged from sharing ideas about what it is we see for the very same reason that Elon wants to provide all those viewpoints from all around the world. And everyone intuitively gets that. Your ideas about all that stuff, your ideas help to inform people in the same way. Okay. So what I thought was really interesting about this post, he says the Kalshi team has worked hard, sued the Biden administration, and achieved the impossible feat of becoming the first and only legal prediction market in the U.S. And so the on the surface take on this, I understand to be, they went through licensing by the government the same way that a casino might go through that same process. Okay. Or that a, startup financial firm, I'm sure, has to do something. Certainly, if you wanted to start a bank, that sort of thing would be true. So I understand that is the surface level interpretation. It's funny, often when I'll speculate about something or go in a different direction than the consensus describes, people will yell at me that it's the most obvious thing that the television is already saying, as if I have no idea that viewpoint exists. And that's what I would say. Please don't normie-splain things to me. I know what's being said about it. I am saying something else, as if I haven't made a decision. And then they're like, no, it's that. Oh yeah? How do you know it's that? Well, my cousin's a firefighter. Okay. Well, I'm sure he's a very brave man, but here's the thing. I am going to stick with my viewpoint. And if I prove to be wrong, so be it. But the argument that I am wrong because your cousin works in the firefighting field is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. So answer's no. Answer's always no. Now, the the legal prediction market. What does that mean? What do I think that might mean? I have described for a very long time on this show, for 3 years, I have talked about how there is probably a centralized data source with all the data on everything. Okay. And it may be in the cloud, maybe Amazon Web Services. Amazon has had contracts with the DoD before. Perhaps that stuff has been rerouted, was elsewhere. Now it's with Amazon. Was Amazon, now it's elsewhere. Somewhere, all of that information is centrally kept and analyzed. All of it. And at any point, if it can be analyzed all at once, and you have enough data on everyone, knowing exactly which person everyone is, and can select for the exactly right everyone. If you have all that data on them, then you certainly know what their political position would be on any issue at any moment. Okay. The entire idea behind the false god of the internet is that it would inhabit God's characteristics on earth. It would be omniscient, know everything, omnipresent, be everywhere, and omnipotent, all powerful. It could do whatever it wanted at any time. And it can literally shift the belief and therefore the behavior of all humanity at once. Okay? They have actually constructed this thing, and it works. It just doesn't happen to have the spark of human intuition, which is that part of us that is created in God's image. It's not God. But they have created the false god, and some of them worship it. And so that is the evil twin version of that. And I want to make sure that the tool that has been created that they worship is not forever controlled by the worshipers, just by people who understand it as a tool. It doesn't even mean you have to break the tool or hate the tool or reject the tool. It just means you have to interact with it as a tool. The good twin side is if it knows what everybody believes all the time, then it can be responsive to that. Okay? If it is used as a tool. Now, maybe it shouldn't be used at all for these purposes, but maybe that's impossible to avoid. Right? But if the thing exists or will exist, it already does exist. And if that thing exists, then it has to be reckoned with. And short of simply destroying it, and maybe that's what has to happen, okay? Maybe that's what has to happen. I'm not making a moral argument here. I'm just setting up the framework and laying out the scenario. Maybe that's what has to happen. But otherwise, if that's not what has to happen, then to guide that tool in the proper direction, it's not about anyone seizing anything. It's really only the collective belief. So once again, you have that, and that then creates reality. We are in a very, very interesting time. Don Jr. just said the first legal prediction market. Now, the financial aspect of it obviously has no connection to what I'm saying, at least none that I can recognize right now, except unless it has an easy interplay with a cryptocurrency. Just saying. If it knows what the people believe at all times, then it is then what people believe is the most important thing in the world. And it turns out that what people believe is always the most important thing in the world. And I'm glad that I messed up speaking so that I could flub that line as it came to me. Yeah, wild times. Checking in on the chat here. Okay. Everybody's chilling. Let's do a couple of more things and then we'll get on out of here. So people understand, of course, how much I truly adore based dictator down in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. I think he's one of the funniest characters in this entire thing. I'm going to play this video. And so it's him speaking in, I believe it's Spanish, and with subtitles. I'm going to try to, I guess, speak over it. Hopefully it's not too terribly loud. But the post is from BRICS News. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he will invade Puerto Rico with Brazilian troops and liberate them from the United States. I mean, oh God. It's so great. It's so great. This is the best storyline. That is so funny. That's so funny. Okay, hold on. Let's play it. I'm going to have to. Okay, let me first turn the volume down. So we'll do this. That's what we'll do. That'll work. Okay. Have an agenda of liberation. Our agenda was written by Simone Bolivar. Freedom ending, and we will achieve it, Breno, with Brazilian troops, and Abreu de Lima will lead. The Abreu de Lima battalion will liberate Puerto Rico. What do you think? So, what was his name? De Lima? I'll have to check that out at some point. I don't know. All right, we're going to have to check out. Why don't I just do it now? Sometimes I just end up, I'm trying to talk myself out of figuring it out. And I'm like, every time I do it, I'm like, that's lazy. Just do it. Breno. Abreu de Lima. Who is Abreu de Lima? Brazilian no. Wow. So he was, the original, I guess, was a Brazilian military officer, politician, journalist, and writer who lived from 1794 to 1869. He is known as General Abreu y Lima for his role as one of Simón Bolívar's generals in the Spanish-American War of Independence. So there we have it. There's probably a really interesting story there. And then it's so funny. In modern times, Ramon Abreu de Lima is a partner at PAG.law, specializing in mergers and acquisitions, venture capital financing, and international corporate matters. He advises businesses expanding between the U.S. and Brazil and has experience counseling Brazilian companies to seek to expand into the U.S., as well as U.S. companies and investors looking to do business in Brazil. How about that? Bolivar, Brazil, de Lima, both of those things. See, this is why I'm glad that I do these things. That is amazing. So I see something like that, and all I can think is, with what else is going on, you know, we've talked about Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal, United States Navy protecting the waters around absolutely all of North America. Okay. As was probably the point way back when, before our country got taken over by the Nazis. Or, before the regime took back that big chunk at the Civil War, or when they took it back with the Constitution. So we've got the U.S. Navy protecting around all of those borders. The idea being pressed to the public is that Donald Trump is like basically seizing these states. He wants to be the dictator of North America. In the story where we are framed as the Nazis, where Donald Trump is Hitler and all the MAGA supporters were Nazis, they run the same playbook as World War II on us, then we're the bad guys forever, even though we didn't actually do any of the heinous shit that all of them encouraged, like coerced medical experimentation. For instance, all the DeSantis simps got vaxxed. Like, we didn't do any of the things that will be in the future described as us having done, but it's going to be framed as us. Okay. And in that future, we will be described, Trump will be described as having invaded Greenland. And that is when he kicked off the war. Okay. They run the same playbook over and over and over again. So if Donald Trump peacefully gives Puerto Rico their sovereignty, which he should, and Brazil facilitates this relationship with Venezuela as the other side of it, and the three parties agree, that is Donald Trump peacemaker to Venezuela, showing that they can be worked with and that he doesn't actually want to take over the entire continent. He wants to free it. So I believe that's what we're seeing here. And based dictator is making it happen. Or we can just pretend that Nicolas Maduro is exactly as described by the news and has destroyed the economy of Venezuela. Isn't it weird that they describe Nicolas Maduro in the same terms by which they described Donald Trump? And they do that with Putin, and they do it with Orban, and they do it with MBS, and they do it with Bolsonaro. And you can just keep on going down the list. Lukashenko in Belarus, Duda occasionally, but lesser degree in Poland. Same thing with Fico in, Slovakia. All of them described in the very same terms as Donald J. Trump. They don't go really very hard on Georgia Maloney or Nayib Bukele or Javier Milei, though. They kind of tout them. It's all very weird. Again, I'm concerned about the technocracy. I'm not concerned about the technology. The technology is good as a tool. You just can't worship it. It's so weird. People are like, does this mean you don't like Bitcoin anymore? I'm like, what does this have to do with Bitcoin? I'm still like on board with soft war and a Bitcoin maximalist. It's clear that it's going to have some role. It's not 100% clear that it's necessarily on the good side. You got to be open to everything. You got to be open to everything. I don't trust anything 100%. It just seems to match all the patterns of what a good currency needs to be. And then it has all of these other uses as a tool. So as a tool, I think it's probably wonderful. That doesn't mean that many of the people promoting it are good people. They are selling their model of how the future should be, and they want people to allow them to create that future. We don't have to go along with their model, and we can do that while understanding that technology is still a valuable tool. So I don't see the opposition, but a lot of people think there is one, and I don't understand why. And you can view that from the other direction as well. A lot of people see Bitcoin as a technology. Well, a hammer is also technology, okay? But they see it as the technology. They see who is connected to it, and they understand that there's kind of something maybe pseudo magical about it. But what if it's not pseudo-magical about it? It's just about the way a certain class of people describes it and communicates it and its purpose and this, utopian vision. There are people who worship technology. There are scientific materialists and, people who worship that false god. Undeniable. And it's entirely possible that they are obsessed with tools that are very useful. And you can use those tools in one way, or you can use those tools in another way. And if the belief as expressed through those tools is going to be what guides our future, then we have to be on a moral plane concerning our beliefs. Venezuela invading Puerto Rico. One last piece. This is what we'll do, and then we'll wrap it up here today. Checking the chat quickly. Hold for processing. Okay. Here we go. Politico today. I believe today. Yesterday. Apologies. I think things are going to be bad, really bad. The U.S. military debates possible deployment on U.S. soil under Trump. Magnificent. I cannot imagine things more magnificent than a headline like that. And let me just recall how long. We're not going to go through all this, okay? Really incredible. But we're going to try to jump through pretty quickly. The last time an American president deployed the U.S. military domestically during, gosh, man. Okay, let's just start over again because my brain is doing that thing where it skips ahead to all the other words. The last time an American president deployed the U.S. military domestically under the Insurrection Act during the deadly Los Angeles riots in 1992, Douglas Oliphant was there. Oliphant, then a young Army first lieutenant, says things went fairly smoothly because it was somebody else, the cops, doing the head cracking to restore order, not his 7th Infantry Division. He and his troops didn't have to detain or shoot at anyone. There was real sensitivity about keeping federal troops away from the front line, said Oliphant, who was ordered in by President George H.W. Bush as rioters in central South L.A. set fire to buildings, assaulted police and bystanders, pelted cars with rocks, and smashed store windows in the aftermath of the videotaped police beating of Rodney King, a black motorist. They tried to keep us in support roles backing up the police, he said. I want to just offer that maybe we should consider throughout this, thinking of the Rodney King thing and the LA riots in exactly the same way we see the George Floyd thing and the George Floyd riots. It sounds like George H.W. Bush was just running an op in Los Angeles and wrecking a bunch of stuff for whatever plan they were pursuing. And there's no reason to believe otherwise, to be honest. By the end of 6 days of rioting, 63 people were dead and 2,383 injured, though reportedly none at the hands of the military. That's extraordinary, is it not? But some in the U.S. military fear next time could be different. According to nearly a dozen retired officers and current military lawyers, as well as scholars who teach at West Point and Annapolis, an intensive, quiet debate is underway inside the U.S. military community about what orders it would be obliged to obey if President-elect Donald Trump decides to follow through on his previous warnings that he might deploy troops against what he deems domestic threats, including political enemies, dissenters, and immigrants. Now, is he deploying troops against immigrants? That is a little ridiculous. is he deploying troops against dissenters? Well, to the extent that the people committing the crimes also dissent from Donald Trump's agenda, then it is necessarily true that the people being arrested are dissenters. That doesn't mean that you are going after dissenters. These people are insane. Imagine them describing any of this from the other direction. In fact, you don't have to imagine it, because we saw it after January 6th, and we were called extremists and domestic terrorists. Unbelievable. On November 18th, 2 weeks after the election, Trump confirmed he plans to declare a national emergency and use the military for the mass deportation of illegal immigrants. One fear is domestic deployment of active duty troops could lead to bloodshed, given that the regular military is mainly trained to shoot at and kill foreign enemies. So because they are mainly trained to kill, we should fear American bloodshed, like they're pit bulls in a dogfighting ring. Like, it is likely that citizens will be killed by the military because what they do is kill. I mean, these people are insane. There's no logic to that whatsoever. It is only a slander, and it is only a narrative seed. The only way to prevent that is establishing, clear rules of engagement for domestic deployments that outline how much force troops can use, especially considering constitutional restraints protecting U.S. citizens and residents against what kinds of people in what kinds of situations, and establishing, wow, it's the same word. Those new rules would require a lot more training in the view of many in the military community. So they get to go out, they're going to make new rules. Rules of engagement for domestic deployment. And it occurs to me that this might be why we had that strange little op about how the federal forces who raided Mar-a-Lago had permission to shoot and kill the president. Remember that whole silly thing? Does anybody believe that happened in a fake raid? No, it can't have happened. There might be a record of it happening somewhere. Doesn't matter what the record of it happening was. That's silly. And when if a rules of engagement would be published in a situation like this, the news would then say that that Donald Trump has granted the military the license to shoot and kill American citizens. That would be the headline that runs fake news is future history. That headline 100 years from now would make it clear to the readers that Donald Trump was Hitler. Do you see what I mean? This is long-term narrative seeding, so that in the event that rules about this are published, and of course, they'll have to be somewhere, they will run headlines about how Donald Trump has given himself the ability to shoot to kill American citizens if they are dissenters. That is a bold claim for the fake news to be making and setting forth for all time. Everything I hear is that our training is in the shitter, says retired Army Lieutenant General Marvin Koval, who commanded the 7th Infantry Division in 1992 in what was called Joint Task Force LA. I'm not sure we have the kind of discipline now and at every leader level that we had 32 years ago. That concerns me about the people you're going to put out on the ground. So now he is setting out the idea that the troops are going to be making bad decisions because they were not properly trained. That's incredible. Retired Army Lieutenant General Marvin Koval. What a guy. That's incredible. In an interview, Covalt said he was careful to avoid lethal force in Los Angeles by emphasizing to his soldiers they were now, quote unquote, deployed in the civilian world. He ordered gun chambers to remain empty except in self-defense, banned all automatic weapons, and required bayonets to remain on soldiers' belts. Ooh, very safe. How very secure. I'm going to have to ask the machine about this guy. Where is the Wikipedia? No Wikipedia. Really? Let me just check one more time. I would love to see the Wikipedia because I would love to know which defense industrial complex organizations he works for. 2 combat tours in Vietnam as a young officer, a 32-year military career serving at direct operational and strategic levels, involvement in developing the Army's use of light infantry, command of federal troops in the 1992 Los Angeles riots, deployed under the Insurrection Act by President George H.W. Bush. I mean, that alone should be enough. Oh, these are his very famous claims. The machine, oh no, the machine is getting that. Huh, the machine's getting some of this from today's Politico article. That's really amazing. In 1992, he stated, oh, this is also from the Politico article, so we'll just see it. Okay. Wow. Isn't that amazing that they can just put this article out today, and now the machine's best knowledge of this character is this article? It's incredible. At least, you know, it puts it up in terms of priority. In an interview, I just did that, but Covalt added that he set those rules at his own discretion. Wow, how did that happen? Even then, Covalt said he faced some recalcitrance, especially from U.S. Marine battalions under his command that sought to keep M16 machine guns on their armored personnel carriers. In one reported case, a Marine unit asked by LA police for cover misunderstood the police term for standing by and fired some 200 rounds at a house occupied by a family. Fortunately, no one was injured. Yeah, gosh. I wonder if the people who owned that house got injured in the riots, but thank goodness they weren't injured in this thing. If we get fast and loose with rules of engagement, or if we get into operations without a stated mission and intent, we're going to be headline news and it's not going to be good. Okay, well, it's going to be headline news no matter what, because the communists run the media. And if all the plans are put out in advance, man, it's gone so far with these people. It's unbelievable. Everything is being set up to make Trump Hitler for doing the things that must be done. Like, people do need to be arrested. And to the extent that there are, who knows how many millions of illegal immigrants in the country, they should be deported. They have to be. Solve the American housing problem. Oh, there are houses everywhere? Oh, weird. There are facilities everywhere that could take care of Americans and that are being used for illegal aliens? Weird. Can we have those back? Yes, we can. Oh, cool. It's really incredible stuff. Trump has repeatedly said he might use the military to suppress a domestic protest or to raid a sanctuary city to purge it of undocumented immigrants, or possibly defend the southern border. Some in the military community say they are especially disturbed by the prospect that troops might be used to serve Trump's political ends. Well, that's not what it's used for. It's going to be used to clean up a foreign occupation. That's exactly what the military is supposed to be used for. It's supposed to defend this nation against foreign threats. What else could it be used for? We're so bent around the axle on the Insurrection Act and on the idea that the military cannot be deployed on United States soil. And the Civil War is used as the cover to do that. But in the Civil War, the country deployed the military on United States soil to pass laws that the people didn't want and overturn their constitution and change society completely. And the same people argue that was a good thing. So what could be the purpose of a military if not defending the country against foreign occupation? And it's funny because they say it's the opposite thing. The military is actually to go defend other countries whose people are trying to seize them back. Oh my gosh. It is so weird. So weird. But 28 days later, when the police killing of another Black American, George Floyd, sparked sporadically violent protests nationwide, then President Trump openly considered using firepower on the demonstrators, according to his former Defense Secretary, Mark Esper. Well, that's hearsay and meaningless. Also, George Floyd was a psyop. We can all admit it now. We don't have to pretend that stuff was real, do we? And they just compared them exactly. LA riots, George Floyd. Same up. Rerun. Trump asked, can you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something? Esper wrote in his 2022 memoir, A Sacred Trust. At another point, Trump urged his Joint Chiefs chair, Mark Milley, to beat the fuck out of the protesters and crack skulls. And he tweeted, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Esper wrote that he had to walk Trump back from such ideas, and the president didn't pursue them. Oh, he didn't pursue them? He just made a leaker report them to the press? Nice. Darn, I wanted to look at something, and I kind of just... Using firepower on demonstrators. There was something I was about to look up. Darn. Oh, I don't know. I wonder if when the looting starts, the shooting starts, is a warning to the regime. You want to send your looters out tonight? It's on you. Gosh, strange times back then in 2020. Let's continue. The topic is extremely sensitive inside the active duty military, and a Pentagon spokesperson declined to comment. And what they mean is when they say inside the active duty military, they mean the people in the Pentagon. They don't care what the low people think. Trump is filling his Pentagon and national security team with fierce loyalists. The concern is not just in how much force might be used, but also whether troops would be regularly deployed to advance the new administration's political interests. Oh gosh, I just read that twice. I apologize, guys. 3 hours in, it's or 2.5 hours in. Starting to drift. The topic is extremely sensitive. The Pentagon spokesperson declined to comment. Several retired military officials interviewed said they were gingerly talking about it with their friends and colleagues still in active service. And Mark Zaid, we had this guy. We talked about this guy in a couple different clips about a month or so ago on the show. Maybe almost 2 months ago, talking about how the people in Washington were all freaking out. So as this guy said, a Washington lawyer who has long represented military and intelligence officers who run afoul of their chain of command told me, so he's basically like the deep state military guy lawyer. A lot of people are reaching out to me proactively to express concern about what they foresee coming, including Defense Department civilians and active duty military. Among them, Zaid said, are people who are either planning on leaving government or will be waiting to see if there is a line that is crossed by the incoming administration. So they're all actually panicking. Gosh, the DC National Guard. Oh, that's just for that. Let's skip down here toward the end, because usually in the middle of these long pieces, they're just kind of telling stories, and they have nuggets, but I don't want to go through all of it. Okay. Skipping down. Under long-standing military codes, troops are obliged to disobey obviously illegal orders. For example, in order to conduct a wholesale slaughter of civilians, as happened in the village of My Lai during the Vietnam War. But under the more than 200-year-old Insurrection Act, Trump would have extraordinarily wide latitude to decide what's legal, lawyers say. You know what gives him even more latitude? The Constitution. You know what gives him more latitude than that? The original Constitution. The basic reality is that the Insurrection Act gives the president dangerously broad discretion to use the military as a domestic police force, says Joseph Nunn, an expert at the Brennan Center, communist think tank. By the way, this is a German news site, Politico. It's an extraordinarily broad law that has no meaningful criteria in it for determining when it's appropriate for the president to deploy the military domestically. There we go. He has dangerously broad discretion. That means he can do it anytime he wants. Nothing in the text of the Insurrection Act says the president must cite insurrection, rebellion, or domestic violence to justify deployment. The language is so vague that Trump could potentially claim only that he perceives a conspiracy. Okay, well, that's why you don't need the Insurrection Act, do you? What you need is a commander-in-chief who directs a centralized coalition of the state militias after Congress has declared a war. Ha! Man, I just came up with that idea, by the way, didn't I? Prove I didn't. Nobody cares anymore. Nothing. Yeah, so that's the standards in the Insurrection Act. What about he has to alert the public that they need to disperse? Because Donald Trump did that on January 6th, 2021. Donald Trump did that thing, the one thing he actually needs to do to invoke the Insurrection Act. He did that. And nothing could restrict him, as it says right here. He doesn't even need to cite insurrection, rebellion, or domestic violence to justify the deployment. But he does cite insurrection. He says the real insurrection was on November 3rd, 2020. Crazy. It's crazy. This article right here is being written in 2025, and it's saying what we said 4 years ago? Huh. How? The Insurrection Act, a blend of different statutes enacted by Congress between, wait for it, 1792 and 1871. 1871. But how? But how? What was special about 1792? Second presidential election, George Washington was reelected. The emergence of the two-party system in American politics. Well, it also says John Adams. Oh, reelected as vice president. The Coinage Act was created, creating the U.S. Mint and establishing the dollar as the official currency. Well, that's pretty incredible. The Militia Acts of 1792 to call out the militia when threatened by foreign or domestic threats and creating a more uniform militia structure. So that's when they were establishing a standing army, which many of the founders did not want, for good reason. Because with a standing army at the federal level, then they don't have to look to the states, do they? So it's a centralization of power and authority, one of the most important centralizations. And it gets further away from the people, which should tell you you live in a totalitarian state. And of course we do. Interesting dates. And of course, 1871. That's when they established their little special place down in Washington, D.C. Most Americans do not realize how often presidents have invoked the Insurrection Act, often in the view of historians, to the benefit of the nation. So every time before, the historians have supported the notion that the Insurrection Act should be invoked because the president needs the extra authority to put down the people. But this time, no. Okay, this time it's a violation of everybody's rights, and they should fear their own military, not only because Donald Trump is in control of them, but because they're poorly trained. Poorly trained. So the regime propagandists are happy to support this whenever it supports them. And if there's a chance that it doesn't support them, then it's the worst thing that ever happened. The funny thing is that it already happened 4 years ago. Now they are telling the stories, which is hilarious. I mean, I don't know how this thing happened, but it did happen. Everybody can see that it happened. And people were saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. So yeah, it's weird, but so's all of your friends and neighbors wearing 2 masks in their car because they're scared of a disease that doesn't exist. Well, there are ways of being poisoned and stuff, but COVID deaths, total COVID deaths, 0. Most Americans may not realize how often presidents have invoked the Insurrection Act. Oh, I just did that. Sorry, skipping down. We're at second sentence here. While it's been 32 years since Bush used it to help quell the Los Angeles riots, the Insurrection Act was also invoked by President Dwight Eisenhower following the Supreme Court's 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision when Ike deployed the 101st Airborne Division with fixed bayonets on their rifles to help desegregate the South. What? I'm going to have to spend some time on that, I think. George Washington and John Adams used the Insurrection Act in response to early rebellions against federal authority. Huh. I thought the Constitution saved us from the king and that everybody realized that the Constitution saved us from the king. So why would George Washington and John Adams have to use the military against the people in the years right after the Constitution was passed? Man, that's a head scratcher. That's a chin stroker. Abraham Lincoln invoked it at the start of the Civil War. We all know what that was for. And President Ulysses Grant used it to stop the Ku Klux Klan in the 1870s. So that's basically like Antifa or Black Lives Matter or any of the other groups. It's exactly like, what were they called? The little Nazi foot soldiers. One of the parts of them. Stormabteilung? Or was it Antifa, the kind of controlled opposition thing? Anyway, they're obviously one of those groups. They're the regime's threat against Black people. That's how they were. Now, there are other regime threats against Black people. Let's keep going. So, good uses here. The media supported them. All of these were for the betterment of the nation, but now Donald Trump is doing it to make the nation worse again. Cam Cooksey in the chat says, you mean forced integration? Interesting. But when it comes to the next Trump administration, the real question for most military lawyers and personnel will be less purely legalistic and more ethical. Even if Trump decides something is legal and the courts back him up, are troops still bound to do as he says under the Constitution? So now they are ready to encourage that the troops defect, despite knowing what Trump is doing is constitutional. That's incredible. And of course, this would delegitimize the Supreme Court in their mind as well. And that is why we saw the info ops against Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh. Has Amy Coney Barrett really gotten one? Clarence Thomas, but Thomas and Alito in particular last year, major info ops run against them to make them look like these weird conspiracy theorist, insurrection supporting Trump extremists. Maybe these decisions have already been made. One lawyer, John Dane of Loyola, a former, we're getting pretty close to the end. Maybe we will get through this whole thing. Might as well do it right now. I didn't want to go on this long, but here we are. A former Army career officer and West Point graduate calls this the Milley problem, referring to the well-documented angst of former Joint Chiefs Chair during Trump's first presidency. Milley stirred controversy by publicly apologizing after Trump used him in a staged photo of the Lafayette Square incident. During the January 6, 2021 insurrection, he reportedly assured then Speaker Nancy Pelosi that he would prevent any unwarranted use of the military, and he has acknowledged calling his Chinese counterparts to assure them that no nuclear weapons would be launched before Trump left office. Well, that's easy because launching nuclear weapons is not possible. If that is true, then it's an admission of treason. Milley, who has called Trump fascist to the core, sounded like he was almost joking, it was so dumb, later told Bob Woodward for the 2024 book War that he feared being recalled to active duty to face a court-martial for disloyalty. And if all of the surface story is true, then that's exactly what should happen. At one point, Trump himself suggested Milley could have been executed for treason. And again, if the surface story is true, that's what should happen. In a newly published law review essay, Dane argues that while Milley might have breached his constitutional duties, the Constitution, quote, is not a suicide pact, end quote, and Milley served a higher purpose by protecting the nation. Well, no. If he had a disagreement with the order he was meant to carry out, he should have publicly resigned over it. That's his duty to the nation. He quotes Thomas. That's the same excuse, by the way, as Bernie Sanders uses for his colleagues to engage in corruption in order to keep their positions as politicians. Okay. I have so much good that I need to do in my job that it is worth me doing this bad so that I can keep my job. Really what they want to do is keep their position of influence. And we saw COVID doctors do the same thing. Well, you know, I would speak up, but then I would get fired. And I think I'm going to do a lot more good by staying here. Okay. He quotes Thomas Jefferson writing, strict observance of the written laws is doubtless one of the high duties of a good citizen, but it is not the highest. The laws of necessity, of self-preservation, of saving our country when in danger are of higher obligation. So it wasn't for him. It was because he was going to save the country that he had to violate one of its most foundational and fundamental tenets about how things are supposed to operate. He broke the constitutional chain of command. Similarly, some within the military community are urging troops to lawyer up and to prepare to resist what they consider unethical orders, saying resistance can be justified if the soldier thinks it would jeopardize the soldier's own conception of military neutrality. Well, what that is notice to the American public that they will be using lawfare on the military. They're going to use lawfare on the military to stop Trump and try to slow all these things down. Really amazing. So they're trying to make sure that the commander-in-chief has no power, particularly not to protect the nation on its own soil from a foreign occupation by eliminating that foreign occupation. And that is what the mission is, okay? And that can't always be clean. And it's important to keep that aspect in the back of your head when you are analyzing situations like the one currently in Los Angeles right now. By refusing to follow orders about military deployment to U.S. cities for political ends, members of the armed forces could actually be respecting, rather than undermining, the principle of civilian control. Oh, Crimea River. Others within the military community disagree, sometimes vehemently. Such thinking is seriously misguided and could lead to widespread legal problems for military personnel, says retired Air Force Major General Charles Dunlap, a former deputy judge advocate general now at Duke Law School. I am concerned because I do think there's been some mistaken information that's out there. The fact is, if an order is legal, then members of the armed forces have to obey it, even if they find it morally reprehensible. In a Washington Post op-ed published after the election, another retired general, former Joint Chiefs Chair Martin Dempsey, agreed, saying it was reckless to suggest that, quote, it is the duty of the brass to resist some initiatives and follow the good orders, but not the bad orders that a president might issue. Dunlap cites the military's standard manual for courts martial, which states clearly that the dictates of a person's conscience, religion, or personal philosophy cannot justify or excuse the disobedience of an otherwise lawful order. Dunlap and other lawyers also noted that Supreme Court precedent backs that up. In 1974, the Supreme Court ruled an army is not a deliberative body. It is the executive arm. Its law is that of obedience. But the rest of the executive branch, they don't have to obey the president. Only the military does. The rest of the executive branch can undermine the president as much as it wants, and they can say it's also for the good of the nation like they always do. And then they can try to stop the president through lawfare or by simply not doing their jobs and being publicly proud of it. Dunlap cites the military's, sorry, I just went through that one. Inside the military, this conundrum is known as lawful but awful. Isn't that what they call the freedom of speech policies on Twitter? Isn't that what Linda Yaccarino said? Isn't it amazing how that language comes from the Pentagon and goes through a DARPA tech app? Lawful but awful. Active duty troops have no choice, especially if the order comes from the commander-in-chief. No one should be encouraging members of the military to disobey a lawful order, even if it's awful, says Nunn. And it's crucial that is as it should be. We don't want to live in a world where the military picks and chooses what order to obey based on their own consciences. We don't want to ask a 20-year-old lieutenant to interpret an order from the president. Indeed, that could set another dangerous precedent. Some military lawyers say by undermining the principle of civilian control that the founders said was fundamental to the U.S. Republic. You don't have to look far for examples of countries where the military is picking and choosing which orders to follow. Most legal experts agree that troops must obey all nominally legal orders. But military lawyers say it's important for troops to remember that even if called into action, they must obey people's constitutional rights, including the right to assemble and be protected from unlawful arrest or seizure or unreasonable force. Yes, that is right. How about that? We don't have to put them up in our homes either. You have to follow the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments. They don't get waived, said Dane. When it comes to the 4th Amendment, for example, which protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government, the requirement of reasonableness applies to the military just as it does to police, said Dane. So do protections for due process and other rights of the accused enshrined in the 5th and 6th Amendments. Due process still applies, Nunn agreed. Military personnel deployed under the Insurrection Act can't do what law enforcement can't do. They can't shoot peaceful protesters. Yale's Fidel says any successful challenges to Trump's orders will likely be more retail than wholesale. By this, he means that even if the president can broadly justify the Insurrection Act legally, you might be able to show a particular order is unlawful. For example, if you're ordered to use your helicopter to create a downdraft to disperse rioters, remember that happened at Lafayette Square, or shoot at students. In the end, much will depend on what Trump's senior legal advisors tell him and what courts decide, lawyers say. But for the first time in memory, we have to consider the possibility we could have a commander-in-chief who is willing to order the military to do something that is pretty threatening to the constitutional order, says Parsons, a West Point scholar. It's not at all threatening to the constitutional order. It is preservative of the constitutional order. These people are insane. Their reality is totally inverted, okay? And we don't have to meet them somewhere in the middle. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to say maybe he has a point or he must know what he's talking about better than you do or I do while we read his words. His reality is inverted. There is no threat that Donald Trump poses to the constitutional order. Donald Trump is restoring the American Republic. The threat to the constitutional order is the usurpation it has endured at nearly every point for the last 236 years, at least, or maybe all 250, or maybe longer than that. If we get the law straight, what's the right thing to do, adds Parsons. If the president invokes the Insurrection Act, we don't really know what the ethical boundaries are. Among the military lawyers, this is just uncharted territory. Well, then, let's chart it. Donald Trump said, unprecedented, what did he say? Unprecedented crimes, unprecedented cures. Let me get the exact quote here. What did Donald? What did he say? He said, man, it gave me COVID information. Wow. Hold for processing. This is a lot of hold for processing. Apologies. Oh gosh, the machine does not want to give it to me. Anyway, he suggested that we may need unprecedented cures. And that is exactly what we do need because, you know, what are you supposed to do with a foreign occupation? Says one lawyer who has studied many cases of military-civilian conflict and spoke on condition of anonymity because he fears retribution from the new Trump administration. I think things are going to be bad, really bad. This is going to be worse than last time. Trump is angry. He desperately wants to turn on his TV and see guys in uniform on the streets. Trump does not care about that. These people are insane. They never have any idea what Trump is talking about, what Trump is trying to do, what he means when he speaks. They have no idea what MAGA wants, who MAGA represents. These people are just so stupid. They exist in an information bubble. They have no idea. They have no people in their lives with any clue what Trump or his supporters actually think. It's mind-blowing. But Trump, for one, hopes that cooler heads will prevail. I'm cautiously optimistic that people are going to realize that not all the campaign rhetoric is going to be translatable into action. Well, I guess we shall see, or perhaps a lot of it has already happened. All right, guys, I'm going to check the chat and then we will wrap up there. That is going to be very interesting as we watch that issue unravel. Thank you guys for the Rumble rants and the new subscriptions. I will be back on Wednesday with a live stream for paid subscribers only. And I will be back on Thursday for a live stream, public like this one. So I'll be back at the same reasonable time, same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will never be president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.